Welcome to the BPM 360 podcast. I'm Russell.
And I'm Caspar. And together we will help you navigate the treacherous waters of the BPM adoption journey. I hope you enjoy the podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the BPM 360 podcast. Russell, my friend, how are you today?
Oh, fine. It's Monday and I spent 3 hours getting here in the rain. So what am I meant to say?
Where is here?
Well, we're in Rotterdam. I mean, what
wow.
a ride. And fantastic equipment here. I suppose every audience now that has been listening into a couple of episodes will be saying, what the hell has happened to their voices?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So we're actually a guest at Apolix. And we have two guests on the podcast today, Russell. Again.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't know where to look, left or right. You know, this is going to be a challenge for me. And and it's going to be a more challenge to actually somehow get all the topics we want to discuss into 40 minutes.
Yeah.
So I think it's
well, let's get cracking.
Exactly, let's get cracking.
First and foremost, welcome Alex and welcome Lucia to the podcast.
Woo!
Yeah,
Thanks for having us.
That's the spirit.
That's the Monday spirit we want to see.
Yes, we'll give you a chance to introduce yourself properly, obviously. But I think it's very good that the audience knows who we're talking to today. So in this case, Lucia, when we go first, Alex, I hope you don't mind. Lucia, could you please briefly introduce who you are and what you do?
Perfect.
And how did you get into BPM? Sorry, I like that question so much. We did last week.
Yeah, so my name is Lucia. I'm a senior process intelligence consultant at Apolix. So that's what I do. And so I usually implement projects around process mining, but now recently also process modeling. So how I got into BPM is, I think around 6 months or a little bit longer now, I had the opportunity of being enabled as one of the early champions into CPM, which is a technology that Celonis uses for process modeling. Mm-hmm. And that's also how I got to meet Caspar, because we've worked actually together a lot on projects for business process modeling. And I've had the opportunity and luck to witness him doing some process excellence workshops as well around not just what modeling is, but also the strategic importance of it. So I'm super happy to be invited on this podcast.
Very nice. Thank you very much. And the pleasure was all mine, by the way. Alex.
Yeah, good afternoon, and hopefully everyone is having a better start of the Monday than I did. My whole house is a construction site. But I'm very happy to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity. So my name is Alexander Stromberg, but please call me Alex. And I'm the CEO and co-founder of Apolix. And as Lucia already shared a little bit about the work that she's doing, we are really this one-stop shop for process improvement. So that basically comes together in two main disciplines: the process intelligence part, really turning your processes and data into knowledgeable pieces of information to improve your processes. And then, of course, the process excellence part, right? We really help our customers also then to leverage Celonis, but also outside of Celonis to help to optimize and improve the processes. And then the whole BPM, CPM part of that is really something where Lucia is working on as well. And so good. So far, so good, I would really say. So excited to be here today.
So I have to ask the question, if your house is a construction site, I use this analogy all the time. What was the first thing that the contractors asked for when you start to think about doing a construction at your house?
Are you sure you want to do everything at the same time?
That's a valid one.
The upfront payment.
Not what I was going for, but
We know what you're going for, but
I think what you want to hear is you need a good blueprint drawing for understanding what the model of the bathroom is going to be looking like.
Now there I have a question. So from what you said about your company, you started with mining and now you're going into CPM. Now for the construction site, so it sounds like you got some diggers in and you went mining first, and then now you have a problem. You need to do the blueprinting. Is this analogy also correct for your construction site? Or did you do it the other way around, where you came from the planning and the process management, and then you went into the mining?
Well, it was a planning first and then actually mining, which was, I would say, the right approach in this case. But then this morning we were also informed that even though there was a good planning and a good blueprint, not everything was made so far the way it was supposed to happen. So even with a good blueprint, you will really see that in reality, some things might actually be different, which I think is a great metaphor for later.
And the analogy really fits as well, because what we see with customers, and I think you'll agree, is that you have the people doing the planning and they have the blueprints, and then somewhere else you have the people doing mining and they don't care that somebody actually created a blueprint. So a lot of the times we have this like tribalism between groups that are engaged in mining and BPM, say more or less the process management from a strategic or compliance perspective. What's your take on that? I mean, also this like shift, or you said that Lucia is now relatively freshly now doing the CPM, BPM part of it. Is it like a Dutch phenomena that mining seems to be like the foremost priority, and there's a lot of development around there, research and development, and that BPM seems to be like the second tier, the follower-up, whereas in other countries like Germany, it's more or less the other way around. And process mining been around for 30 years, but it's always been like the second step that customers have been jumping into. See similarities there? What's your take on that?
Yeah, that's a very good question as well. First of all, we are currently operating in like 20 different countries, right? So whether we can make a cultural fit about that, I cannot really determine that. But the joke that Joost and I, that's my co-founder and the COO of the organization, we always made when we were pitching process mining and process intelligence to customer back in the day, because everyone already went, we have a BPM model. We've already done these, like we call them brown paper sessions before.
Yeah.
But the outcome of these sessions is a nice book about this big, and they normally have a big cupboard somewhere in the basement most often, and then they put the book into the basement, and then when you ask them to actually see the blueprint of the processes, you first need to find the key, then where the actual cupboard is, and then if you find the book with the blueprints, you start with like blowing off all the dust. So then the real question is it valuable, yes or no? I think it's at the moment maybe a reflection of how the organization is operating on a process level. But most often what we see when we actually get started with a project is that the customer has almost a clean blank slate about, hey, we've done this many years ago. We don't really know where we're standing and what's currently happening.
Yeah.
And then indeed you might say we are starting really with the mining. And from the mined image through process mining, then we kind of take a model about, okay, this is best practice and this is what we allow for. And then the rest are deviations. But maybe also, Lucia, you've been more involved with these type of projects recently. Like what is your experience with that so far?
So I can agree with you that I've seen some customers that indeed start from a blank page in terms of they have this idea and the need clearly to document their processes when we're talking about purely modeling, for example. And they don't really know exactly how to get started. Modeling, so BPM has been there for a long time, older than me, obviously, the discipline in the area. But it's quite interesting to see that sometimes at customers, they have had initiatives and have modeled their processes, but it could be that indeed the consumption of the process flows and models has been maybe not as effective as possible. So that's on one side when it comes to modeling. But now as well with mining, it's really cool to see that some customers are also having a look at, okay, I don't just want to model, but I also want to incorporate and link that to my mining data, because modeling, you could model your process how it should look so that it aligns with strategic objectives and your operating model. But the visibility into how the process is actually running, which comes more from the mining side, sometimes is not there. So it seems both worlds are working in silos. And what I've seen from customers is also the need to combine the both. And I think that's what makes kind of this conversation around mining and modeling so interesting and with such high potential.
Yeah, I totally agree. There is one thing that we skipped over pretty quickly, which I tried to get in, but Russell already dove right into the topic, which I love. Alex, just a question to you. I mean, you just mentioned that you're active in over 20 countries.
Yeah.
How did that journey look like? I mean, you founded this company with just 2 people.
Yeah.
How did you get where you are now? Where are you now?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Well, now I'm in Rotterdam in our office building with you guys. But It started September 2019. So me and my best friend, and still best friend nowadays, Joost, we really started the company together from my bedroom. So two fresh master graduates with the ambition to conquer the world and leave a lasting impact by becoming the very best in one thing and one thing only. And our eyes fell on process mining already around that time period.
Mm-hmm.
So without really knowing anything about process mining and how it worked, we already started the company and decided like, hey, this is a cool technology. We can really make an impact, and it's very in high demand and necessary as well for companies or organizations nowadays. And then basically from that moment onwards, we really just, started with learning about really what process mining is. So a lot of people always think that, we maybe already had some experience or background in process mining or Celonis, or we had it in our studies, but we really had to learn first what process mining was before or after we even already started the company, basically.
So just one question. What's your background then?
Did a bachelor in international business and a master in finance. Okay. I always believe that numbers never lie, and I really like to work with numbers.
Yeah, and that fits the topic of generating value.
It does.
Yeah, that's nice.
That's what they say. We still hire a lot of people with this background. No, but we really saw the potential in 2019 about it as well. About what we were really going to be, what opportunities there really were with process mining.
Mm. Yeah.
Awesome, we're live again on the.
Where we're live again. The people who don't look at the podcast but just listen to it, which is the majority, the camera in the room that we're in is a bit faltering at times. So don't worry.
But maybe so that while talking, Alex easily
it's
maneuvered through Caspar's
it's
set up and then reactivated the camera. So that's
Russell. It's a different generation. They can do that.
The muscle memories there.
Yeah. Born and raised with computers, and iPad in the hands. Luckily not. That was the generation after us, I believe. No, but we really saw the potential ambition, and we just kicked it off with the what do you call it, a MOOC, the massive open online course of Wil van der Aalst.
Oh,
we went through all the dirty nitty gritty of Petri nets and BPM models and X gates and O gates, and I'm glad I've never heard those in a very long time anymore. But and that's how we started the company, and then we were really thinking like, okay, this technology is super cool, but we're not gonna now spend our time on developing a new software, a new platform, right? So we went to our best friend Google, still up until today our best friend, and just Google what are the best process mining software vendors out there. And in a period of 1 week, as we had so much free time, we basically reached out to the 10 most important the top 10 of the software vendors. Half of them didn't respond. The rest of them either came back very short-sighted. One visited us actually, and Celonis, which we're currently still partners with and very happy with, by the way, was the one that actually took us the most serious from the beginning. So Joost and I, we always said transparency is going to be one of our core values. We're going to be open, honest, transparent, right? That's also what sets us apart as a consulting agency. But it also meant in the application to big, unicorns or software vendors saying, we are two students or ex-students with little experience in my bedroom trying to change the world. I think that turned off most of the software vendors, but it reminded the people from Celonis so much of their founding story.
Of course, yeah.
That they wanted to take a bet on us. So then parallel to learning what process mining was and the theory behind it and stuff like that, we slowly but surely started to learn about Celonis and how the platform worked as well. And maybe people remember or do not remember anymore, but in March 2020 is when the world closed down.
Oh,
due to our best friend COVID.
The trauma, we pushed that away.
Yeah. We ignore it. We simply ignore it now.
But. Yeah. So, but that was what put us out of business about 20 times almost in a row every month. But the fact that we started the company in such a turbulent time period, I think really also made us very resilient about dealing with those circumstances, about what is happening. None of the potential customers had responded anymore. Definitely no one was starting up new consulting projects. Everyone was occupied with getting their IT stack remote and these type of things. So that was, I would say, really like a very difficult and tough time for us. But it really trained us from the beginning, like, okay, we are at rock bottom. And at rock bottom, the only way is kind of up.
Yeah.
And we started, just like take on surfers some free projects as well in Celonis to show like, hey, we are actually capable of this. I know you need to believe us, so we're not going to charge you. But if it goes well, we want you to be a reference case. And basically, when we landed our first project where we would actually get paid, the first thing we had to do was actually not like do it ourselves, but now we needed a team of interns, and because we didn't have much money, right? No money at all. So we really got our first office then somewhere, I think in September-ish 2020, or more towards 2021 already. And it was the me, Joost, 2 interns, and a mentor that we had on board in the attic of some sort of real estate company here in Rotterdam. And yeah, and from that first deal and project that we had, which ended up to be quite successful, we started to be able to let go of all the little side projects we were doing to generate money as well.
Yeah,
And slowly but surely over time, we really started to become more known for the quality of the work that we deliver, the type of projects that we run. And we grew from interns to working students. The difference is the pay.
Of course. Yeah.
But the rest is pretty much the same. Yeah, and then to consultancy consultants. And now, I mean, I'm skipping a bit of an in-between part, but we managed to now still bootstrapping the company. So without external investors or whatsoever, or capital in that sense, built a company now to a team of almost 60 people, purely on Salonas and process improvement, basically process excellence. With 2 offices in Rotterdam and also in Spain, Madrid. We have now a team of 15 people. Yeah.
Cool. Oh, really cool.
That really is.
Yeah.
A fast rising, success.
Yeah.
If you look at the, I mean, you said that you actually went through that ditch time when projects were scarce around the pandemic. How do you see the dynamics now? I mean, I myself, very much located with German customers, so there's been a lot of insecurity, but not so much like this abrupt disruption of the market, with COVID, but it's more like, we had that phase when there was a lot of supply chain disruption and the companies were struggling to adapt to that. And now there's this phase where there's like this general which direction we go. There's these high dynamics coming from AI, super high expectations. But then to a certain extent, the companies are not wondering, do I invest now or do I de-invest? Do I have to shift? So it seems to me there's a lot of insecurity. How do you see that similarly, with your, view on, the different regions that you're acting in? And then how far is that impacting the not just the business in general, but the way the people are they digging into different topics like sustainability more? Are they more pinpointed on value creation, or is this more, are they getting to a mature level where they're saying, where they're rolling out the project? How do you think this is like translating into your activities on a consulting level?
I hear the same things as you're hearing and what you're experiencing. I hear that too, but it's not really something I would say that's impacting us. I mean, we are more than doubling year over year. I think this year growth is almost 140%. And what I see in the market is more knowledge about process mining, more understanding about process mining, and also more need for process mining, right? When we started process mining or Apolix about 5 years ago, it's like every single conversation we had to explain what it was, what it looked like, what it did, and what it could mean for you.
Yeah.
And nowadays, most often when we have a sales pitch, when we're like not a customer yet or haven't worked with it before, at least they've heard and seen it at a conference or they know people from the field. And the reason why you're even there in the first place is because they feel like it's now a topic that people cannot avoid or go around anymore. I wouldn't say it's a industry standard yet that every organization does it, but I feel like especially after COVID that people feel like this is one of the areas where you do need to invest. It is very critical for your organization to understand what is happening in my supply chain, what is happening in my inventory management, what is happening to all my working capital, why does everything get stuck in accounts payable, for example, right? And these are really relevant topics. And I think COVID stress tested the hell out of every organization in the world. Then obviously due to the impact on their profits and the cost increased and the revenues were down, I didn't see massive investments right after that. But now when the economy is picking up again and actually even growing in most regions, we do really see that companies are still very much willing to invest into these areas, right? And some of the big challenges have been the inflation, for example, what's been happening with the wars on the macroeconomic level as well. And that really means that for a lot of organizations, they're looking for smart ways to cut down costs.
Quick.
And there's also a shortage of labor. So they need to, with the same amount of people, they also want to grow, but with the same amount of people, they need to do more work. And then they really end up quite quickly at efficiency, right?
So maybe taking that topic over to Lucia, because now you're saying, so at first you had to explain everybody what process mining is. Now they're getting to the level they know it. Now, if you're going more from that side of, let's say, the companies down to CPM and BPM, then you're getting to know the people that said, we did that 30 years ago. So it's not you're not having to explain BPM, but I think under a different context, so you have to revitalize it. Do you also see that there is like this different on maturity, principally on BPM, but there is like this new interpretation and new value you have to interpret into it as something that you're confronted with or have to bring in?
Absolutely. I think indeed on this reinventing or looking at BPM in a different way. Now, because indeed process mining is being more and more well known, more and more companies are implementing process mining or have already implemented process mining. And now, of course, they have probably also done modeling. And when you can offer to them this way of having a look at modeling from a process intelligence perspective, let's say, so really embedding the data, the insights, all of this down to up type of approach of data into modeling, I think that really generates a new interest for modeling, because it's exactly taking the best of mining and fitting it into modeling. And it's also, of course, helping with the consumption of those models as well. Businesses are no longer interested in just documenting their processes because they've been doing that for a while. And there's many, many different tools in the market. There's companies that have been offering solutions for modeling for many years. But I think the key differentiator now also comes with a solution that can embed mining data, as I was saying before, not just to understand how the process looks like and if it's aligned with the organizational strategy, but also what is actually going on and where do we have a discrepancy between the modeling and that 360 organizational context that we get from BPM and the mining, and how we can close the gap. And what I've seen, which is, as I said, really, really interesting and has a lot of potential, is this having a look at modeling, but from a process intelligence perspective.
Mm-hmm. So the interesting thing here, and I use this with clients as well a lot, is where I say, listen, process mining is a brilliant technology to get to value very quickly. You can very quickly find root causes for apparent issues. You can try to solve them. But they're typically, and I'd like to have your opinion, both of your opinions after that, a little bit on that. They're typically quite short-termed, short-cycled. And then a while down the line, 6 months, a year ago, later, you need to revisit that or revitalize it. And I very often say, listen, the thing that you do with process management basically provides you with the fundament on which you can plug in all those process mining initiatives that you've done and bring things together. Is that something that you see as well, or do you think there's a different relationship between the two? Alex, start with you in this case first.
So I think there's some companies aspire to be something and where they directly actually are in reality, right? I think those are two actually wildly different things as well. Mm-hmm. I do see and hear a lot from our customers and in the market that they do want to have this baseline and revisit the topic and be on top of things as well, and to really manage it also. So both the BPM part and also the process excellence intelligence part. But in reality, you do see that the plans and visions are quite often either very short term or short-sighted, maybe in some ways. Yeah. And then the moment something more urgently, more important comes up, they already jump or deprioritize those things around BPM as well, right? Yeah. And there are some companies that I believe, are doing this exceptionally well. I think Etienne, for example, from Carl Stores is what I've seen so far and heard, like kind of the holy grail on how you want to balance BPM, your processes, your blueprints next to it, and also process intelligence, and constantly revisiting the topic. But then you also need a proper dedicated team to maintain this. And we see that most customers that we work with actually do not have a dedicated BPM or process management team. So it's very different from industry to organization to just the skill of the company too. And what I see a lot is how young or new the companies are, or maybe how old and robust maybe is it's a polite way to use here. That I would say the younger ones, the newer companies, they're often, but also the younger crowd working on the organizations are more interested in leveraging technology to make sure that these things keep happening on a day-to-day basis. But
Yeah,
BPM is not as hot as it should be.
No. True. I agree with that. Lucia, you want to add on to Alex, or do you have a wildly different opinion?
No, I want to add on that. BPM is indeed not as hot as it should definitely be. And it's interesting that you come and sit down with companies and they struggle to even understand, okay, where is the knowledge on BPM? Why is it not actively being consumed? And I think that's also the struggle in the BPM, when it comes to BPM, the consumption side of it.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, because you said context on the one hand, talking about, say, building up the knowledge of the company, and then also the consumption. And that's something so what's your take on how that is now changing with the means of artificial intelligence? Is that something where like your hopes are in, or you already have like specific cases where you can actually then say heave all this knowledge and provide it in a more efficient way for consumption?
I mean, if you take a look at the solution that Celonis has, CPM, it does integrate indeed a lot of artificial intelligence to facilitate that consumption. You have the ability to generate models and model itself through AI, but you can also interact with the content on more of a front-end view by asking a chatbot. So I think at least the approach of this solution is really trying to leverage AI indeed to facilitate consumption. Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing that I always see is that there is different audiences in your client's organization, right? So there's a group of people that you probably know very well, the process experts and the specialists who are doing the continuous improvement, but the consumers of that information are typically potentially anybody else in the organization, right? And what you would typically like to do is like to see how can we, as easily as possible, open up that information for everybody to use. So Alex, my question to you in this case would be, if you're coming also from a process improvement, very strong process improvement background, how do you make sure that whatever it is that you find with the process mining technology, how do you translate that into an improvement and a sustainable improvement, one that sticks?
I think a really great example is a project that we actually recently started with one of our customers. I shall not name this company, but I think it's very cool, where you have process improvement with a perfect overlap with process intelligence, process mining, and actually process modeling. Mm-hmm. So basically what we're doing over there is it's quite a big organization with like finance teams decentralized in different regions as well. But their main headquarters and their main processing power is actually located here in the Netherlands as well, right? So what we now did as an initial project was to take a look at their AP and AR, accounts payable and accounts receivable process. Mm-hmm. And now in particular, we're starting with their accounts payable process, where we mapped out exactly how the process is going in reality right now, according to the data in their IT system, right? Then based on this initial mind model, we basically are working or building a model about, okay, this is what happens in reality, but this is how we want it to actually go in reality. And that's, I think, where we have the model now finalized on and set together with the customer, like, okay, hands, let's shake hands. This is what the model, the process is supposed to look like. And now what we're doing on all the different regions, so we're tackling them region by region. Mm-hmm. We're going over there, we're mining the process. Then we lay them over with the ideal model of best practices. And then based on the deviations and differences between these two, we're going to actually change the process to optimize it as well to fit in the global model that we designed together. And what I think is even cooler is that we're also looking for best practices on a regional or local level to kind of, keep optimizing this model on a week-to-week, day-to-day basis, and not just be stuck with the mindset. And this is the model, and everyone goes into this path.
In the headquarter. The ones there, because sometimes you find the gems in the local sites because they have less staff or whatever. They're sometimes better streamlined. but having that possibility to roll out, but also roll in whatever you gather, I think that's a great potential.
Yeah, and that's what we're doing right now, and that's going to be super cool. I mean, the outcome is yet to be determined, but the stakeholders and also the business is actually very excited about it. You know, getting the business excited is the most important part to actually drive sustainable change.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's also quite often the biggest challenge, right? Like a lot of people want to change, but not a lot of people actually end up changing. But then once we started to implement these changes, we can kind of from a control center point of view, we can also monitor, okay, are people actually now using the process how it's supposed to be? Are there going to be deviations? And we can then immediately like, jump on top of it again to see if there's any weird deviations in the process. And then it's really important to make it sustainable change is to create this governance model around it. Who's responsible for it? How often do we look at it? If there is deviation, what are we going to do with it, right? It should not be a one-time off. And to be frank, those kind of initiatives to do it properly is also too expensive, in my opinion, to make it a one-time off. If you want to do it correctly, just like a car, you need to every so often to do like an APK, but ideally you check it on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis.
And exactly. So it's not just the maintenance. So what I quite like actually when we're discussing our general framework, you know, on the success factors of BPM, you know, we're talking about the stakeholder, how important it is to have a strong mandate for the initiative, but then also about having ownership for this topic and not just in a headquarter, but having this on a wide span within the business, getting them enthusiastic about this topic. But on the other hand, also having like this governance that will take it and monitor it, make sure that these things that you've agreed upon, that you stick to it, or else everything just starts falling apart again. So there's these three components, and here I think that's where also the process intelligence and the process management that's where they fit together, because the one is very much more driven on the analytics, the analyzing and monitoring of processes. But to actually make that stick and implement it sustainably, you need that process, the management side of it. So you need the intelligence side to really dig down and say, hey, look, this is evidently not good, and this is how you could do it better. But to manage it on a global scope, make it stick, that's where you need the management side. And so it actually is an ideal combination. And it's interesting to see for which directions the customers are coming and now coming to an agreement that they have to get both done for it to be sustainable.
And I think what's really important to make it sustainable is it needs to be a shared commitment and a shared party to say so, right? If you're going to have an external team doing the process mining, another team doing the process mapping, and another team, which is the business actually using the process, you're going to have a lot of teams that, you know, it might be actually difficult to bring together, right? So in an ideal world, it's actually someone in the business, a key user, some sort of pioneer or supporter for our cause and initiative, to actually be driving that initiative from the inside out, right? They know much better what happens, why people change, and why things impact the process as well. So actually having someone in the business as some sort of, I don't know exactly the word, but some sort of like a holy person to take care of everything.
An evangelist of sorts.
That's the word I was looking for.
Word,
so much. I think that's important to make it a thing, because what a lot of people and organizations don't like, and it's fair enough, is to have someone from another department coming in again with another request again to tell you what to do differently again without you understanding why they need to change. So it needs to be a rather on the inside out.
But and that's an interesting conclusion actually, because if you look at what makes a BPM implementation successful, is that executive sponsor. So Russell mentioned stakeholders. You need to you don't want to go top down, but BPM very much is a top down business if you want to get started with it. Process mining can be much more bottom up because you do it typically more locally. But you need that one person that basically says, this is how we're going to do it. But at the moment that you have that kind of mandate, it becomes easier to position like an evangelist. And I think you mentioned Etienne Kneschke from Karl Storz. He is an evangelist in essence. I mean, that's the basic definition of an evangelist. I wish we could get him on a webinar or something. I don't know.
Shout out to Etienne.
Well, we'll have him as a guest in the podcast one day, Russell. I'll promise you that. But it's that person is vital. And I'll give a very small example. So I worked in the manufacturing industry, chemical manufacturing, for almost 2 decades. So at DSM, you probably know the company. We had the good fortune of an executive sponsor being the CFO of the company. That helps. We have it helps.
That doesn't help.
That seals the deal.
But that's not all. I mean, I can make you more jealous. At the highest peak of our process management maturity, we had a department called Process Advisory and Services, which was 50 people, 50 people, of which 45 were actually like process consultants and business consultants, and they were put on projects of the business for free. It was funded by corporate. And there was the 5 people that was the center of excellence for BPM. And that was a team that I was leading. And that all we did is set the boundaries and the method and the tools. And we tried to combine management and mining in one. And that was a very powerful combination. I can also tell you that at the moment that CFO left for another company, we got a new one in, they changed the CIO out, and within 6 months, boom, it was gone.
That's very sad. But I was going to ask you, this Roman Empire that you built up, what actually brought it down? It's always the same. You see these, in history books, they say, wow, they built up so much, and then half a year later,
I'll have the answer. What brings them down is the same as what builds them up. People.
Yeah,
it's people.
So it was not just the CFO and the CIO that left; it was also Caspar that left. Yeah, he left that detail out. Probably.
No, I'll tell you another interesting little anecdote. When I was in that particular position, I had 2 young persons in my office that were starting up a company, much like you and Joost, Alex, and they trying to sell me a mining solution that was up and coming. And their names were Alex and Basti, and you might know them. They are the
rings a bell.
It rings a bell, yeah. So I actually had them in my office, but we were using at that point in time another solution for management and mining. And after I left, I think 6 months after I left, actually, they became a customer of Salonis as well at DSM. And that had nothing to do with me, by the way, because I was quite impartial, but we already had a solution that worked at that point in time. Right now, if you look at the mining practice is thriving at DSM, but the process modeling and management action is gone, and I'm in contact with them actually.
Yeah, but that may have a bit to do with this effect that DSM is actually doing a lot of demergers and reorgers, whereas the local groups of optimizing, they can still thrive and develop because they have this like local view on like Envalue as a good example. Yeah. That's a demerger from a part of the DSM business. So to keep this big BPM like documentation thing together, like where you need overarching methods that have to be aligned and the tooling, I think most probably it's easier in such troublesome times of a company, bringing in and bringing out organizational parts to keep the BPM part together, but the actual optimizing the operations on a data level, that's something you can always bring up a team and create real value.
Absolutely.
But how would it ideally look like, right? I mean, I would love to preach more about our experience with CPM and BPM and all these things. It's more within process intelligence and process excellence, and obviously we have exposed to it and we do some work with it as well. But the most successful customer or company that is also practicing like a good process intelligence department and a good BPM or modeling department, like, is that a shared department? Is that separate units, or how would it really look like in reality?
Oh, that's a good one. And I think personally, what they call that a federated model, sometimes a hub or spoke model, where you say, listen, I have a relatively small central group of people that set the boundaries and basically define the playing field. And then you try to move as much of the responsibility into the business units, where you have your little pockets of excellence that are aligned with your central group. I think that would be the most pragmatic and the most efficient way of structuring that nowadays.
Yeah, and the challenge, I mean, of course, it always depends on the size and the structure of your organization and company. But ultimately, you want to actually then provide from the center of excellence, provide a baseline that others can use. So you have like your central evangelist that will also always assure them with the top level management what the best practices are. but you want to establish autonomy on the local sites, and that's also for the sake of BPM best case. Yeah. So as I say, for process mining, it rings, say excellence initiative on a local site. Yeah, that's easily established. Most probably get people to dig into it, but I think it also works to a certain extent for the BPM side. But it's not naturally there because typically the initiatives are very centralistic, and they have to more or less force themselves to actually let go and build up this ownership and responsibility in the local sites. And that's, I'm not saying it's against the nature, but it's really contrary. So the BPM coming more top down has to let go. And I think the act on the local, let's say, initiatives around process intelligence, they have to cross-link. So you still will need this champion that may actually then also have knowledge or tap into what the other local sites are doing. So you have to, how do you get them to talk to each other if there's nobody in the middle of there? And that's what you're talking about.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
How do you facilitate the exchange of best practices also when you have local initiatives?
And would it then be per region one of those gurus on a local level, or would you want to think on a process level, right? Because one region can have multiple processes and you want to put one in every process, or what? How far can we take this?
You want to take the first crack at that, or should I, Russell?
No.
Yeah. Okay. So normally I would say the initial way to do, I would say, is via the process aspect. So you make sure you have a global process owner in place. They can delegate down responsibility into lower levels of the organization, but the accountability stays at that person. But you need probably a bit of a hybrid mix between a strong global process owner and a regional evangelist, guru, ambassador. Ambassador is maybe the best word, a regional ambassador. So if you're talking about a procurement process and you have imagine you have a manufacturing organization that has many sites in different parts of the world, and you have this global process owner for procure to pay or purchasing. He or she would still need a local ambassador on the ground in that site in Honduras to make sure that everything is adhered to, because that typically doesn't work from an ivory tower. So both, but it starts with the global process.
And what we see is with good owners on that domain level of like purchasing, they're always balancing out the strategic view on how he wants to develop with his, according to a strategy over the next 5 years, was purchasing. And he gets knocked every time, say the numbers aren't there. So he has to make tactical decisions on how do I get my numbers, my operative numbers right. And there he gets a lot of trouble from business. And they're saying, what's up here? On the other hand, he has to somehow follow a certain company structure over the next 5 years. And that's where the owner is good, because actually he should be the ideal candidate. If it's ideally, they can say, okay, I need local initiatives to, really dive into excellence. But I also need to have a certain, make sure that their objectives they get, that they are somehow aligned with my 5-year goal. And that's where I think then he can really bring this together and then they can excel. But it would be a domain level, because I think domains, they order accounts payables, order to cash and purchase to pay, they have they're coming from a different strategy as well. They have different, they have different problems,
So if the headcount is there, you would want to have a centralized center of competence or a COE that kind of facilitate the main knowledge hub. And then then you have on a global level, you have someone who's, for example, the owner of procurement or procure to pay. And then on the different regions, you have a guru also for this domain, for more the local team. But then maybe even on a local level, depending on how big the office is, you want to also have some sort of guru in general to promote BPM and process intelligence.
That would be the process expert level.
Yeah, the process expert level. Yeah, absolutely.
But when we do template rollouts, typically you have a global process owner that actually, when implements and rolls out a template, he will have a local process owner in the region that takes over and has all the specifics of that region, also from a strategic and operations view, and breaks it down into the process experts, and then establishing a community of process experts across all regions, because they are talking on eye level. So establishing and facilitating for communities on your company level, that's the last, bit in the equation to make it stick.
Now, as usual, I'm keeping time. Yeah, time flies.
Well done. We're 5 minutes over.
No, I put some extra time in. But before we close out this podcast, there's one question to both Lucia and to Alex. What would your number one advice or tip be for companies that would like to endeavor on this process intelligence journey? I'm going to start with Lucia. Sorry to put you on the spot, but what would your number one advice be?
Oof. Don't you want to start with Alex and then I can have it?
Alex, now this is to show why you make the big money.
Lucia always dreams about these type of things, right? It's a big one. It's very simple. Just do it, right? It sounds like a brand campaign for Nike, but
it doesn't matter.
Just do it. We see too many companies and customers overthinking, overanalyzing, over-planning. There is no holy grail for your organization on how to do it and where to get started and whatsoever. Just start somewhere and kind of go along with what you learn and what you find and the type of people that you get involved, and then just keep moving forward and just be reflective and be concrete, right? Look at what you're doing. Does it work? Yes or no? And then just maybe change direction or whatsoever. But don't spend months or even years for some customers that we have on trying to find the perfect process to get started. Just start somewhere. Reflect on the results, see what you miss, see what you can learn, and roll it out to the next one. And in an ideal situation, find yourself the right partner to bring their experience as well, right? They can guide you, they can help you, but also try to make sure you have yourself the internal resource and capabilities. This is really a shared thing you do together. And you do need internal people to support it.
Well, that's here. You've had a bit of time to think about it. That you've got to top Alex's short notice on what to advise.
Not sure if I can top it, but I can add to it indeed. And also have a look at what other companies are doing when it comes to process intelligence. There are so many success stories. There are so many companies that have already been successful. And I'm sure for a company that has not done anything yet, they're probably not dealing with the most unique areas or the most unique use cases for process intelligence. So there's so much to leverage just by looking around, because otherwise I think a company that doesn't do it will definitely regret it. So yeah, just do it, I guess, as Alex said.
Oh, that was a real good point, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really learning from others, because essentially that's why we're doing this podcast.
Yeah.
Because we're also bringing in, insights from people like you, and that was really great today. And I think that's something everybody needs and wants to do, is like work together on getting your processes into a better place.
Yeah, absolutely wonderful. And for those listeners, take a look at the YouTube channel as well. We're in a fully equipped podcast studio today. Russell, I'm just like a little boy who got a new toy. It's
true.
It's like
not
me
sitting at home.
That.
Yeah, like at home, we're in our work closet.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I feel like Harry Potter actually came down back to Hogwarts now.
Well, if you do it with Apolix, we'll do it right.
Yeah. I could ask a question. I'm not going to do that. The one thing I'm going to do is thank you all very much. Alex, thank you for hosting us here and being a guest on our podcast. And Lucia, thank you very much for joining from Spain, if I'm not mistaken. You probably have better weather than we have here, but that's usual. Thank you very much. Russell, you too. Thanks for traveling with me all the way up here to Rotterdam. And we'll catch you on the next episode.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.